Today we're going to talk about a stiff leg. It's a pretty common problem that comes up quite a bit on this channel, so I thought I would revisit this because I have done a lot of videos on this already, but we're going to revisit this and look at this from a little bit of a different angle and talk about some of the issues that have come up recently that people have talked about where they're having trouble doing certain things because a stiff leg is interfering with their mobility. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara, I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, mindset in the context of neurologic rehabilitation with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your rehab and get to your highest possible level. And all that being said, we're going to talk about a really common problem, a stiff leg. Primarily, this occurs after damage to the brain due to either a stroke, a brain injury, or MS. And by a stiff leg, I'm primarily talking about an involuntary contraction in the muscles that extend the knee, so the quadricep muscles, that usually go along with sometimes also having spasticity in the ankle or the muscles that point the foot down. Now, I've talked about this before, but I think it's always good and worth repeating. Why does this happen in the first place after a brain injury or a stroke or an MS lesion? These involuntary contractions. In a healthy brain, the body, and the muscles are getting a lot of input from the brain. And what that does is in a developed brain, the brain actually inhibits contractions in the muscles. So when you look at a baby, to give an example, everything's moving. Their arms and their legs, they're just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle all the time. As our brains develop, the brain actually inhibits certain muscles from firing, which allows us to learn coordinated movements. After a brain injury, you lose that connection. That brain loses a little bit of a connection with the body, or the body loses a little bit of a connection with the brain. These muscles are just kind of left out on their own, kind of like the kindergarten teacher has left the room and the kindergarten students are just left to do whatever they want. So what happens? You get these involuntary contractions that you can't control. So for a stiff leg, quadriceps, and the muscles that point the foot down seem to be the most common culprits, which means that you can't bend the knee when you need to swing the leg through. The other thing you can't do if you have this involuntary contraction is that you can't flex your ankle to swing the leg through. So the leg will feel really stiff or it'll get stuck on the ground. Another thing that came up recently is some people have trouble getting the leg in and out of a car because you go to sit down and that leg shoots out in front of you. And of course you need to be able to bend that knee to get the leg in the car. And we're going to go over some ways to remedy that or to make it easier to get your leg in the car a little bit further on in this video. But that's also a pretty common problem. You might also notice just when you go to sit down in general that the leg just shoots out. That's that involuntary contraction of the quadricep muscles. Or you hike your hip up and swing the leg around the side because that leg is stiff again and you can't bend that knee to bring it through. So it doesn't get stuck on the ground, but it'll actually come up off the ground and it'll swing around the side. So how do we untrain or relearn normal movement or normalize movement when these things happen? One is we have to inhibit the overactive muscles, which would be the quadriceps and the muscles that point the foot down. So we do whatever we can to block those muscles from firing, and we have to try and isolate the movements we want. So we have to try and isolate knee bending and ankle lifting in the situations where we notice we can't do it. So first, let's talk about inhibiting muscles. So to inhibit those muscles from locking out, I love a deep squat position. Just getting in a deep squat, staying in this position, you can see your knees have to bend and your ankles have to dorsiflex. And do activities, do some of your upper extremity or your arm activities in this position. Remember, if you have this problem, you know that when you're doing things with other body parts, is when it's worse. So when you're trying to get in and out of the car, you're reaching to get in and out of the car, the leg stiffens up. It's usually when you're doing another activity. So try and do those other activities in this squatting position to try and inhibit those two things from happening at the same time. So that's how you inhibit those movements. The other thing for the ankle specifically is an AFO. Gotta wear your AFO. Also, if you have a night splint, something to stretch your ankle into dorsiflexion. Wearing that while you're doing these activities is also beneficial to inhibit that ankle from pointing downward when you're doing other activities. So that's one, inhibit. Now, to activate or now to get the movement you want or normalize movement, the primary movements you want to normalize are knee bending and ankle flexing. So easiest way to bend the knee is laying down flat with the lower leg hanging off the bed, just putting a weight around your ankle and just letting it fall. When you can get really good at that, then you want to activate the muscles, the overactive muscles, and see if you can immediately follow that by relaxing them. So that's actually what happens when we walk, because you're standing on the leg and you're activating it, and then you immediately need it to relax to swing it through. So you're kind of simulating this same normal movement pattern that'll carry over into walking. So contract it, kick that leg out with the weight on, and then use that weight to let that knee bend. And then for the ankle, stretch, stretch, stretch. Stand on a wedge every chance you get. So this is basically just an ankle dorsiflexion stretch. So you want to take a wedge and put the wider section underneath your toes. And the key to this one is making sure that you're pushing your hips forward. A lot of times when people put this wedge under their foot, their bottom will drift back and they're not really getting a good stretch at the ankle. So when you do have that wedge underneath there, you just want to make sure you tuck that bottom in, and you should feel the stretch along the back side of your lower leg. And when you're walking, a lot of times what people do is they come off the leg too early. So you stand on it really quickly and then you get off of it. So what happens in that case is the ankle never really actually dorsiflexes, because you're getting off of the leg too quickly. So if you stand on the leg a little bit longer and you let your body weight come over the top of the foot, it's kind of like you're setting yourself up for success. You're using momentum and your body weight to kind of passively dorsiflex that ankle just by focusing on trying to stand on that leg a little bit longer. And sometimes what that does is it allows that leg to relax a little bit easier when you're trying to swing the leg through. So definitely think about that when you're walking. The other thing that's beneficial is definitely getting your brace adjusted. So it's a pretty common problem that when the foot points, the knee also locks out and stiffens up. So getting into your orthotist, I've talked about it before, but it's always worth repeating. Getting that brace into a little bit of dorsiflexion is invaluable. The other thing that an orthotist can do, or even your therapist can do, is if you put a little wedge in the shoe, what that does is that can tip your body weight forward a little bit and might stop the leg from locking out, and that might also help to prevent the leg from stiffening up when you're standing on it, therefore making it easier to swing through. Now, how do we address the issue of getting in and out of the car and just sitting down in general? Remember, everything we're doing, we're trying to rebuild that connection with the brain to stop these involuntary movements, right? We want those kids in the classroom to sit down, listen, pay attention, and do what the teacher says, right? So we're reconnecting that brain with the body. So you want to find every opportunity you can to normalize movement. So I'm going to get to the car in a second, but every time you sit down, bring the foot all the way back and do everything you can to keep that foot back. Even if that means you have to put something in front of your foot and practice sit to stands, do whatever you can that leg does not shoot out when you work on doing stand to sit. When it comes to getting in and out of the car, my suggestion is get the feet as close to the car as possible before you flex down to sit down in that car. Then you're setting yourself up for success because most likely the leg will bend. The opposite of that would be letting the leg shoot out when you go to sit back down in the car, and then you're just fighting a battle to get that knee to bend to bring that leg into the car. So bring the foot all the way back as far as you can and don't let it come forward when you go to sit in the car. That'll kind of force that knee to bend, and it might be easier to get the leg in and out of the car. And then if you're in the really advanced stages, one additional kind of set of higher level activities I would suggest would be step down. So keeping your involved leg on the step and stepping down with the opposite leg. What you're doing is you're learning how to step your opposite leg forward and bend the opposite knee at the same time, your involved knee at the same time. The step allows your body weight to kind of assist with that knee bending. So you're relearning how to bend that knee when you step the other foot forward, which is where you want that knee to bend when you're actually walking. So I love, love, love step downs making sure the knee doesn't go out to the side, making sure the foot doesn't try and turn outward, which are common things that happen. And then if you can, go from like a 2-inch step, try and go to a 4-inch step. And if you can, even go to a 6-inch step. Again, retraining that knee to bend when it needs to bend when you're walking. And then here are just a couple more exercises that I love, love, love to give my patients that have a stiff leg. So for this exercise, what we're doing is we're isolating knee extension, so straightening that leg out. You can see I do have something on my foot. I recommend if you are someone that points really hard or you have spasticity in your calf muscle that you do wear your AFO or your night splint. Again, this is to relearn how to isolate that knee and not have that foot point every time you're trying to straighten your knee out, which is problematic when you walk and can also cause your knee to go into hyperextension when you're standing on that leg. So again, you're straightening the knee out with something on your foot to keep it flexed. This is for those of you that have severe spasticity and you don't have the ability to actively lift the foot when you straighten the knee out. So this is just a basic bridging activity. It has a lot of benefits, including early weight bearing, so to get weight bearing through the bottom of your feet, but also those hip extensors or those muscles that extend your hip, super important for remaining or maintaining an upright posture. There are a few variations that you can do this. A lot of times people that have hemiparesis, when they do this activity, that leg wants to shoot out on you. So if that happens with you, you can always put a wedge underneath your foot to help hold it back. So basic bridge. If your leg has a tendency to shoot out on you, you can take a wedge, put it under your foot. That keeps the weight a little bit more on your heel, but it also helps to keep it from shooting out on you. So for this exercise, what we're working on is hip extension with knee flexion. Really critical movement to have for stepping backwards, as well as for getting down onto your knees. If you have trouble getting into kneeling or half kneeling, this is a great exercise to just start working that range of motion and getting the knee joint and the hip joint flexible enough so that you can get down into that position with the least amount of discomfort. Now I'm sitting on this block right here. You can sit on a chair without armrests. We'll do exactly the same thing, but you do kind of want a little bit of your body kind of off the edge of the chair. And then if you have something like this skateboard with wheels on it, furniture sliders work, a paper towel will work if you have carpet, if you have tile, a magazine will work if you have carpet, and then you just want to kind of push that leg backwards, really working that hip extension. So I'm straightening the hip out with my knee flexed. The other thing that is also doing is it's breaking up an abnormal extensor synergy pattern. If you have an AFO, I highly recommend that you wear your AFO. If your foot has a tendency to roll in or roll out, if you can get someone to hold your foot straight so that your heel is pointing straight up, that is ideal. And then you're just going to push back. So I hope you guys found all of that helpful. If you're new to this channel and you found this information helpful and you like these types of videos, definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. I'm super pumped and excited to announce that we had our first Q&A this past week and it went awesome. I think it was extremely valuable from everyone who attended. I want to thank everyone who was there. If you have not heard about this yet, we do a monthly live Q&A where you can submit questions in advance and I will answer those questions live, as well as just an open discussion with anything else that comes up that you guys might want to ask during the video. We actually had time during the call this past week to actually answer those questions as well. So I will put a link in the description below if you'd like to sign up. It's only $5 and it's just an opportunity to get your questions answered so that again, you can own your rehab and get to that next level in your rehab program. Also, if you liked some of those clips of those videos, I just want to remind you all that that is an exercise library that we have available on our website. That is kind of like our premium product. We're adding new videos to that program every single week. So if you are interested in having access to all of those exercises, the link with more information for that will also be in the description below this video. If you have any questions that you would like me to include in a future free video here on YouTube, definitely leave those in the comments below. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I will see you in the next video.